time at the Manor, and now he's running the Bhaktivedanta Center. We would have gone there and stayed there, and plays host to us a couple of times a year, and so we're very, very fortunate. Thank you very much, Akhandadi Prabhu, for coming today, and he's going to share some of his wonderful insights, and we're going to save a lot of time for questions as well. So as Akhandadi Prabhu is speaking, you can also think about whatever questions that you have in your mind, and we'll have sufficient time to cover all of them. So thank you very much, Akhandadi.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I thought I'd been invited here to tell Halloween ghost stories. Maybe later. Hare Krishna. Actually, no, I'm really pleased to be part of this gang. Yes, we have the Pandava still coming and due back with us at Buckland Hall in February. But in many ways, actually, I'm more interested in your gang. You know, the motto that Pandava always kind of talks about is, for a life less ordinary, isn't it? Now, you could read that in different ways. For a life less ordinary, i.e. a less ordinary lifestyle. But actually, let's just think of it as a life less ordinary, a lifetime less ordinary. Because I've always had this issue, in our handling of Krishna consciousness and the training of devotees and preparing them, particularly young devotees, as we prepare them through the Bhakti program and training in the ashram and so on. But I always used to worry, it's a lifetime of devotion. Krishna consciousness isn't just for a few years, a few months, or a sabbatical. Krishna consciousness is for our eternal existence. It's forever. And at least we've got to figure out how to apply that eternal existence within the span that we have within this particular body. So how to make a lifetime of Krishna consciousness for ourselves. We'll talk a bit about for others as well, but we need to actually understand that it's for ourselves. I've got to be Krishna conscious for the rest of my life. I've got to, and I've got to be engaged, and I've got to be fulfilled in that. So that's the sort of topic that I'd like to explore tonight with you, if that's all right. Because I kind of see the alumni as a sort of, my old friends who were in the ashram and now have kind of gone out of the ashram, and got those post-ashram blues, I woke up this morning, but it wasn't at 4 a.m. So, you don't want to end up like the old devotees, when me and my friends get together, we talk about the good old days, when we were really active, really engaged, and all sorts of incredible things were happening, and then we'd tell stories, oh, in the old days we only used to have potato sabji. You had potato sabji? We only used to get 10 chickpeas. 10? So we kind of end up just kind of going back to the old days without actually thinking, when is our heyday of Krishna consciousness? And often devotees confuse what they see as their heyday, their time of most enthusiasm and passion and involvement and immersion in Krishna consciousness. They get confused with that and the heyday of ISKCON. Now that would be kind of my kind of generation. We'll look back to the 70s, and of course Prabhupada was present, and that made a very big difference, But still, I don't believe that was ISKCON's heyday. It was very special to have Srila Prabhupada with us, and we should have treasured it even more greatly than we did. But that wasn't ISKCON's heyday. It might have been when we were most enthusiastic as brahmacharis and willing to do absolutely anything and everything for Prabhupada and go out preaching and, do Sankirtan all night and do some crazy stuff. So it might have seemed our heyday because of the passion and involvement we had in it. But it's not necessarily ISKCON's heyday, and we should not mix the two up. Similarly, some of you, many of you may have been back there in the campaign days, you know, when you were the rebels, you know, the organisation that Special Branch and Scotland Yard were frightened about. I tell the story lots of times. On that big march in 1994, the 16th of March, when we say 37,000, and that was apparently the police estimate, so I'm going with it. You know, 37,000 of us marched in London, and the Special Branch came to see me, you know, because they thought I might know what was going on, and they were saying, "So, what can you tell us about these people who call themselves Pandava?" Oh, actually, I didn't say it like that. Pandava Sena, you know? I said, oh then, yeah. Well, all I can say is that, you know, we're not responsible for them. You know, so, you know, I can't, you know, they're young, they're kind of, you know, annoyed, they're, you know, who knows, they may be a little volatile. I can't say anything more, but you know, I have no kind of direct responsibility. So that was, we were looking for carrots and we were looking for a bit of a stick. You know, with the Pandava saying. And it's like the old story, you know, the snake who became a devotee. You know the story? No, the snake became a Vaishnav. So this cobra used to go around and terrorizing the neighborhood, realized that was not the way to live. You know, he had to change his ways. So he went to his spiritual master, Narad Muni, and Narad Muni advised him, you know, chant and just, you know, don't trouble anyone anymore. So the snake gave up all its bad ways and just concentrated on its bhajan. But then the local children began to realize the snake wasn't dangerous anymore. So they used to start, first of all, calling it names, then teasing it, then throwing stones at it. You know, because they knew it wasn't going to bite them because it was a Vaishnav. So the poor snake went back to Narad Muni. Said, what am I going to do? I can't concentrate on my rounds. You know, these kids keep troubling me and, you know, annoying me. So Narad Muni says, so next time when they come and annoy you, hiss, but don't bite. So the kids came and the snake, and the kids, and off they went and left the poor snake to get on. So with Pandava saying, we were hoping that we had a little bit of a hiss, but knowing that we were dealing with devotees who were mature, responsible, and even though the presentation was strong, we knew that they weren't going to bite. And that was a very powerful element of the campaign. A lot of things came together, you know, and all the elements had to be working, but we needed that hiss, but not biting, as part of our efforts. So I am very, very grateful to Naveen and the other devotees who pulled together the idea of Pandava saying, which actually came out of a previous kind of youth group which wasn't so effective because it was under the control of the temple. Whereas Pandava saying, we actually said, no, it's, you're your own people, you're your own organisation. You know, we'll kind of chat behind the scenes, but, you know, basically you're responsible for yourselves. So we're very, very grateful to all of you involved in that time. And I was thinking what I consider to be the greatest achievement of the Pandava saying. And you could say the involvement in the campaign. But actually I don't think that was its greatest. You did that, yes. And for many organisations, for any youth movement, that would be enough laurels to sit on for the rest of your life. But actually what I think was even more impressive is what happened after the campaign. How the Pandava saying transformed itself from being this rebellious political effort into a preaching organisation. And I think that's incredible. That doesn't often happen. It's not often that organizations which are protest-led, which are activist, manage to survive once the cause is sorted. Most of them fall apart. But you guys didn't. You didn't just not fall apart, you actually transformed yourself into something really special and even more beneficial. You took advantage of the fact that now we have peace and security at the Manor. Now we have opportunities for preaching, for developing ourselves and our friends and our contacts and bringing in a whole new community into Krishna consciousness. You know, every year at Jan Mash, when I see the tents, you know, that you guys put on and the younger guys, I just think, oh, this is incredible. That this is actually the legacy of the campaign. You know, that you've became so involved, so immersed in your own Krishna consciousness that you've developed things and you're giving it to others. So I kind of want to just throw out a few ideas today to try and kind of encourage you. Not that I think, you know, you appear to be lacking, but just to kind of, I suppose, just give you more confirmation of the path that you're on. Because I've always been concerned, you know, you're going to hear a lot of my always been concerned about, you know. I have a chance to kind of go on about a few of my hobby horses today, so please bear with me. But in all my, you know, years of preaching, particularly with our Hindu community, I would often come across many who'd say, oh yes, but we're not devotees, or at least, you know, meaning we're not, you know, full-time, we're not initiated, or, you know, we don't know all the shlokas, you know, and the Gita and things, so we can't really preach. And that's not a good mood, is it? You know, we all know enough to spread a little bit about Krishna consciousness. Do you know where I first learned to chant? It was on a hippie farm in 1972 down in Kent. And there was these two guys. And they were kind of hippie-ish. And one of them had beads around his wrist. And the other guy had apparently spent time in Bury Place. I don't think it was very long. I think it was, you know, he visited there for a couple of days. But they were having these kind of really deep conversations. And we kind of went like this. Hey, in the Gita, Krishna says, if someone's a thief, you call him a thief. And then the guy goes, huh? Where does he say that? And that was the level of conversation. And I was watching this one. Wow, these guys are so elevated in their discussions on philosophy and Vedic philosophy. This is fantastic. And then one of them, you know, they take out the beads, you know, after a while and just go, you know, and chant on the beads. So I thought, that's really cool. I'm going to do that as well. So for 2 years before I went to the temple, I had a string of beads around my wrist. And I would chant completely wrong way around, you know, chant my left hand and, you know, start on the head beat, finish on the head beat. You know, no one had showed me properly, but it was powerful. So I kind of always appreciated that, you know, you don't have to be the sadhu even to convey Krishna consciousness. You know, all of us have got some inkling, some idea, some realization, some taste, some enthusiasm that we can pass on to others. The first time I actually met a real devotee was also that year, 73. And it was a knock on the door in my home in Belfast. I was studying for my A-levels and alone in the house, and there was this devotee standing at the door in a suburb of Belfast. This is when the troubles were on, so it was, you know, it wasn't, you know, an easy thing to do at the time. And he just started talking and just completely captivated me, you know. And I bought an Upanishad and was really fired up. And I saw him walk down the driveway in this kind of cosmic bubble of effulgence. I saw this personality as being belonging to, a different spiritual realm to the rest of the world. I was just amazed. Later on, the devotees told me, oh yes, that was Brahmamurti. Yeah, he was so spaced out that he couldn't do Sankirtan with us. He just couldn't, he just head was nowhere, so we just told him, well, just go and knock on a few doors. So again, it just kind of came back to me that, as devotees, we may have our ways of judging each other. But you've got to understand, every devotee, everyone who has heard about Krishna, everyone who has accepted Krishna, just a little bit in their heart, is so special and so elevated and so far beyond the norm of society. We really have to value that. They say there's 3 things that are really important for anyone to feel that they've got some fulfillment in life. And they probably, derive from Maslow. But the 3 things are belonging, pleasure, and meaning. And I think we need, we'll have a little chat about those things. Because I think this is what's important for the post-ashram blues. Or for kind of seeing yourself, where am I? Some of you late 20s, some of you 30s, some of you 40s. Is that about it now? Every 10 years, your whole attitude about what life's about changes. Did you know that? Have you experienced that yet? Basically, every decade, your attitude changes to what you think your life is all about. And you have to kind of almost redefine and see your priorities, who you are, what your purpose is, what you're here for. It changes. The Varnashram system, in terms of the ashrams, sort of, it divides your lifetime into 4 periods. But even within that, there is kind of various changes that happens. It's like seasons and sub-seasons. So, let's look at, kind of the first one, belonging. Now, we all know the benefit of association. And I don't need to labour the point of how Prabhupada encourages to have the association of devotees. How that's the crucial thing. It's the Vaishnava char, it's the quality of a devotee that he searches out the association of other devotees and finds it difficult to associate with those who have no Krishna consciousness. He finds that association we can handle for a while, but it doesn't give solace or peace or any joy to our hearts in the long run. But what I think is important, and I think why Panda was saying, and now as the alumni, you've got to get a better name than this, because you're defining yourself in terms of what you used to be, isn't it? That's the problem with these old boy clubs. I went to a school, and I'm now an Estonian, because I went to a particular school, and they're always kind of saying, become part of the club, but that's defining yourself in terms of something I did then. Why should that define me? Why isn't that defined by what I am now? Right? So I think, terminology I think will be important for you. You've got to be your own selves with your own vision, with your own sense of purpose now. And whatever that, Panda was saying it's preliminary stuff. They're the kindergarten lot, aren't they? So, a sense of belonging, it's not just, as I say, association, but it's actually feeling that I'm part of a family. This is the craving that the soul has. We understand the Atma is a social entity, because that's what the spiritual world is all about. It's part of the social life, the family, the community of Radha and Krishna. So even when we're stuck in human bodies, that natural desire to belong, to be part of a community, pushes through, and we desire connection and relationships. But more than just we actually want to feel we belong to someone, belong to a group. We know who we're part of. So we have to kind of develop that as a sense of belonging. And then that puts a responsibility on us. Because if we ever said something to another person, or did something, or offended another person in such a way that gave them cause to question whether they belonged with us, that's such a violent action. And we may not mean it, we may not mean it evilly, but we may actually cause violence and real hurt to others. When I gave my Vyas Puja offering to Prabhupada, the Manor this year, I mentioned the concern I had during the dreadful years, after 82 and 85, 86, when we went through Jayatirtha, Zonal Acharya, Bhagavan leaving. For me, those were the bad years. Campaign were never the bad years, actually, because that was easy. That was just government. We knew we were doing the right thing. Krishna was with us. It was just some silly thing that had to be sorted out. But those early kind of years of in the early 80s, they were bad years. And why they were bad is because we ourselves alienated other devotees. Good devotees. Really sincere devotees. And we kind of put them off, and devotees were rejected or cast aside, made to feel that, they just didn't belong. So I kind of felt it was important to make an apology on behalf of devotees like myself who had responsibility in those days for the hurt and the harm and the damage we caused those devotees. So belonging is a big responsibility. It's something we all crave and we all deserve. And we should nurture that within ourselves, nurture the sense of belonging, and what I must then do in order to play my part of belonging to this family. And particularly in not allowing anyone to drop out of the family. What we can do to kind of bring them back and encourage others that they can feel that that's part. So for you in your lifetime of Krishna consciousness, actually that sense of belonging will have to be there. If you're ever feeling bad in Krishna consciousness, check that bit first. How is my sense of belonging? And if that gets damaged, do whatever you have to do, take help, guidance, meet your friend, sort it out. Make sure that's strong for yourself. The second one is pleasure, and I've told this story loads of times. It's one of my favourite Prabhupada stories. When he was in Bombay and he was chatting with a room full of sannyasis and senior devotees, and he was asking them, "So why are you in Krishna consciousness?" And because they were sannyasis and very kind of learned, they were giving appropriate answers. Well, because we're all the eternal servants of Krishna. Probably no. Well, it's because it's our constitutional position to serve Krishna. No. Well, because the soul is connected through the Dini Shakti, blessing us. No. And it went on, because it's our we're meant to kind of give ourselves to, no, 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 no. All these philosophical kind of things were just being rejected. And eventually one devotee just said, because I like it. Yes! That's it. You're in Krishna consciousness because you like it. You've got to enjoy the pleasure of Krishna consciousness. Because remember, you're not here because it's your religion. You've transcended that. This is always the big issue that, when we first started our preaching to the Hindu youth in the 70s, was how to take persons who might have seen Krishna consciousness as their religion, because that's what their mom and dad believed in. That's what the pictures were in the Mandir at home. That's where they kind of got brought to on Sunday, to see the temple. Or the festivals they went to, it was their religion. And the challenge is, and still is, and always will be, that we have to raise the individual from not just seeing Krishna consciousness as their religion, but as their transcendental spiritual existence. That we're not just doing it because we kind of have faith in it or we believe in it. We're doing it because this is, Krishna consciousness is not just a religious process. It is transcendental spiritual existence. It's existing in the bubble of Krishna Bhakti. Engaging ourselves in our, now I'm using all the kind of language of those sannyasis, engaging ourselves in our constitutional state of devotion to Krishna. Something has to change within the heart to go from it being something that's culturally our identity, or in something which is our mental faith, our belief, to something which actually has changed within our heart, and we actually become clear. Actually, I belong to Krishna. My life is for Krishna consciousness. Each one of you has gone through that change at some point, isn't it? You can probably even identify that the moment it happened. Hands up who actually think they could put it, even if you can't put the date on it, you could actually think, I know when it happened. Where you were, what was going on, who you were with, what influence just made that change. You kind of say, yeah, actually this is who I am, this is what it's all about. And you see it completely differently. That's the change that has to happen. And actually that's where we have to be in. You can't now, having had that change of heart, you can't now go back just to thinking of Krishna consciousness as your religion. This is who I am. I've got the mandir at home now. I do the puja and I do the rounds, and I'm now following my religion. No. You have to be having daily mystic experiences. And I don't mean that you have to kind of do some kind of Ashtanga yoga thing where, you're all visiting heavenly planets, No. By mystic experience, I mean that you chant nicely, you hear the mantra so well that actually you feel your heart becoming full. That is a mystic experience. In those years before I joined the temple, I didn't chant that often. But when I did, I really got to understand what it was about. I was just a typical kind of silly student, getting myself into messes and troubles and all sorts of things. But I remember at least 3 different occasions when I got myself in a real mess. And I just thought, I don't know how to deal with this. And and I try and think my way through the problems and it just seemed to get worse. And I think, what do I do? So I just thought, I'll just sit down and chant. And that, a round took me at least 20 minutes. But it was a good round, and I actually really concentrated. I give myself that. It does. You've asked it a question, it responds. And it's trying to create a dialogue with you. But then you say, no, that's okay. I'll worry about the problems later. Don't worry. I don't need to worry that the problems will go away. They'll still be there. You think you have to kind of think about them because in case something goes away. So we keep worrying about things just in case the worry goes away. Which of course is ridiculous. So sometimes you have to trick the mind and say, don't worry about it now. The worry will still be there later if you want to deal with it. If you're really worried about that worry, we can worry about it later. So that's how I would kind of talk to my mind. So I can then just try and concentrate on hearing the mantra. And at the end of that 20 minutes, I just feel completely blissed out. It happened every time. It still happens. But particularly those occasions because, it was like a new novel experience. I wasn't sure what was going on. And I'd be thinking, why am I so cheerful? Why? I've still got these worries. The circumstances haven't changed. And I was worried about them 20 minutes ago, but I don't really kind of see them as such a big worry anymore. And I kind of began to realize that actually this was part of the mystic experience of the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It was very powerful. And actually in each time, because of that, I would then be looking at the problems from a different angle. And they didn't seem quite the same difficulty anymore. And in fact, when you kind of looked at the situation, you kind of thought, actually, this is probably a good thing that's going on, or a good situation, and this can be an advantage if I deal with it in the right way. Or there might be just some little kind of aspect of it might just be tweaked by Krishna. In which case, the worries wasn't there. But it was a nice introduction, and I'm sure you've all had this in your chanting. But the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is a mystic experience. We are not singing bhajans because it's our religious hymns and we just, doing it. And yes, of course, we're trying to do it in service to Krishna, and of course, it's part of our devotion to glorify Krishna. Please don't think I'm not saying like that. But it is part of your transcendental existence. And you must be having powerful mystic experiences in your devotional service. And particularly in your bhajan, and particularly in your chanting of Hare Krishna. And I'm sure you're also getting it in your study of Prabhupada's books. We're not just reading it just till, I've read something and I've kind of learned a few facts and figures. But actually, as you read them, those words, that sound vibration which you're taking in through your eyes, is resonating in your mind and opening up new understanding of yourself and how you relate to Krishna, how you relate to the world, how you can help present this knowledge to others, what it all means. These are the things that should happen to you moment to moment, day to day. This is the life less ordinary, where almost minute to minute you're getting a higher experience in Krishna consciousness. You are all mystics. We don't use that word an awful lot in Krishna consciousness, because we don't want you to become sahajas or, yogis up in the mountains. But we actually are. We're the, Krishna devotees are the real mystics. No one. Who else is contacting the spirit of Goloka? Goloka Vrindavan? Who else is contacting that? None of the other mystics are anywhere near it. But you're in touch with Radha and Krishna every time you chant. You're in their presence. We just have to really appreciate it. So it's really important that you fuel your life less ordinary with the pleasure, the ecstasy, the realizations that come through the mystic processes of devotional service. And then the third one, meaning. And I think this is also extremely important. But it should come out of your realization. And probably for devotee, we define meaning, most of us give ourselves meaning, in terms of our role in Krishna's service. Fairly obviously. We're Krishna's eternal servant. So why wouldn't the meaning of our life be defined in terms of how we're serving Krishna? Right? And particularly, we know that serving Krishna is not only assisting myself to make progress back to Godhead, but actually helping others also. And we were very lucky that Prabhupada, following, has actually awoken us to Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna, and revealing Krishna's wish for us to spread the Sankirtan movement. In the broadest sense of that, to help every soul make some progress back to Krishna. And of course that's how we're going to define meaning. But I think we have to be a little careful. I remember talking with one devotee, and he was saying, the only time I'm happy is when I'm preaching. Now that's a nice statement, but I felt like teasing him. And I said, so if you're only happy when you're preaching, what are you preaching about? What have you got to preach about? Isn't it? If your idea, if giving yourself meaning, is someone else doing it, then there's something missing. Is it, we're chatting about the educational thing, because it is very common for materialists, when you ask them what's the purpose, or what's the thing that gives meaning to their life, they will say, helping the next generation. Isn't it? It's a very common thing, I'm working to kind of help the next generation have this, that and the other. And actually that's a cycle. It's one of these kind of truism circles, or something or other, which doesn't really work. Because unless you have got something special, unless life is worth something on its own, what are you passing on to the next generation? Just raising them up to have the same miserable existence that you have? No. You're bringing people to Krishna consciousness to be, an unhappy, unsatisfied, miserable devotee? like I might be. No. There has to be something in your life that is worth passing on and worth others coming towards. Right? So you need to enjoy and experience and be fired up and be ecstatic. Because then you've got something, and realized. And I don't mean you have to be pure devotees, I just mean you have whatever you have that fires you up, whatever makes you ecstatic, whatever makes you realize, you pass on to others. And then you can, that's meaning. Now, of course, we can kind of then take this and develop it, more specifically. And try where's my niche in Krishna consciousness? And this will be something that will weigh on all of you now. You're at this stage of your life, this stage of your development of Krishna consciousness, where you're probably itching, if you haven't got it already, if you haven't got it really clear, what your role in Krishna consciousness is. It'll be something that's itching away inside of you. Am I right? I mean, I hate to do this, show of hands. But hands up who are really, really clear what they feel is their niche, what they're meaning, their kind of Prabhu Desh, their special kind of area of engagement in Krishna consciousness is at this moment. It may change. Hands up who's really, really clear about what they are, what they want to do, what they want to be. Good girl. All right. Hands up who kind of think, oh, that's still something I need to define for myself. I'm not quite there yet. I kind of appreciate that it will be more in that category because it's not easy. I have dozens and dozens and dozens of old devotee friends who, perhaps since their time in the ashram or when they're engaged in a particular program or something, just not really sure what they're meant to do for Prabhupada. You know, they try their best, they'll come to the program, they try to be supportive, but they're not really kind of sure how to use their energy. And that's sad. I think, you know, it's something that would give trouble to Srila Prabhupada. You know, and it's not a judgment against anyone, it's just a kind of, you know, there's such a resource in any devotee who has come to Krishna consciousness. And whatever the immersion in the ashram or in service or whatever they've done, you know, they are such a resource now. And we each have to kind of find our way to do things. Now, again, one of my hobby horses. I'm very concerned that ISKCON has not been as attentive to that, or has not been. We've always encouraged, you know, people have always kind of got service that we can ask you to do. That's a little different, you know, and we should be responsible. You know, devotees kind of ask, oh, Prabhu, can you get involved with this? Could you do this? And, you know, generally, I like to say yes. But at the same time, I kind of know that as well as that, I need to have that element of activity or purpose or mission that is where I'm really putting my energy into it, and which kind of gives me the sense of fulfillment and purpose and meaning. And I think other devotees, you need to feel the same. We're not saying be neglectful when people ask you for service, but it isn't a replacement for finding your own mission. And where I'm concerned for ISKCON is that it hasn't been as flexible, or maybe as open, in allowing and encouraging devotees to kind of get on with little projects. And there's been good reason for that. Because it has happened in the past that some devotees, in the spirit of enthusiasm and doing something wonderful for Prabhupada, have done some pretty silly things. You know, stupid things, even, you know, there's a few examples, not so much in Britain, you know, but elsewhere, of even illegal things or immoral things, because they thought it was a great idea, you know, it would help spread Krishna consciousness, you know. So sometimes, you know, so some control was needed, particularly in Britain when we went through the anti-cult thing, where we really had to make sure no devotee did anything stupid. The campaign actually with the government was only kind of focused on the temple, but in the late 70s, early 80s, the big issue for ISKCON was anti-cult. You would not be aware of this. You probably kind of think it's complete stupidity and insult to the to religion of your forefathers. But we were under kind of incredible pressure from nasty organisations. My own parents contacted the anti-cult people and were getting fed all sorts of real garbage by them. And it actually hurt my relationship with my parents for many years. You know, these guys were nasty. They were mainly kind of Christian orientated, not just nice Christian, nasty kind of evangelic who didn't want anyone else destroyed, corrupted, sent to burn in hell because they, turned to Krishna. So that was a big thing. And therefore we really needed devotees not to do anything stupid. And of course, at the Manor, because we had our own pressures with the local community, the council, we needed devotees not to do anything stupid. Because we were in a financial mess in the middle of the 80s, we definitely needed devotees not to do anything stupid and waste money and, cause deaths. So, unfortunately, we kind of have developed a certain culture of control as a way of protecting Prabhupada's movement. So again, no judgment on the way things developed. It was perhaps needed. But I think that it's really important that we develop as a society where we're actually able to say, oh, you have an interest to go and preach in such and such a way? Yeah, fantastic. Just get on with it. Do it. To just let it happen. Because my experience is most devotees have been made, and I'm thinking, yeah, actually most devotees are made in, been made in the pub or the student union or the, bed sit, people just chatting amongst themselves. This is where devotees get made. So we need to kind of allow and have a much more inclusive spirit. So if you're sensing that, oh, I don't know what I can do because I'm waiting for ISKCON to kind of give me my Prabhupada Desh, then you may be waiting a long time. Actually, you need to look into your hearts, pray to Krishna and say, Krishna, and you'll see yourself. What are the things that fire you up? It may be a philosophical thing, it may be a preaching thing, but it may be a devotee care issue. It may be a way of making ISKCON more sane and sensible and organized. That is a very valuable part of your mission. And it may not be that you're going to do this for the rest of your life. It's where you're at now, the services that you can offer at this time. You've kind of got to find your Dharma. We were discussing Dharma earlier. Actually, you've got to find your Dharma in Krishna consciousness. Dharma changes because your identity changes. And identity is based on who you think you are. And as I said, every 10 years you're going to think yourself a different person. Yes, I'm still a devotee of Krishna, but I'm a different type of devotee of Krishna. Right? And therefore my Dharma might change. You're going to have to kind of consider, well, what are all the kind of material circumstances, obligations, and situation that I have? Many of you are now householders. Jobs, mortgages, children, lots of responsibilities. We've got to kind of deal with all of those things. And you can't, I don't want you to think, well, later on, I'll get through this period and then I'll be able to engage in service. It doesn't really happen like that. Kids can take up an awful number of years. My daughter's 26. And she's actually more work now than she ever was when she was a baby. And you think, they're little babies, they're kind of needing this, and they're fed, and they kind of nappies change and bath, and but when they get a little bit older, they'll be easier. Not when they start talking, they're not easier. Then you've really got to engage with them. Then get them through that. And then they kind of go through, they really develop, and then they turn into teenagers, and you've got to get more energies involved with that. And then even when they're kind of it never stops. And because you've all got the soft hearts of devotees, you will do whatever is necessary or whatever you think your kids ever want. You will always be thinking about them. We say, once they're married, no. And then once they produce grandkids, the cycle begins again. So don't leave it till you think it'll be okay and that you're now available to engage in your mission for Krishna. That day might not come. No, actually, you've got to find it now. Because what is going to be important for you in your householder life is having the mission, having a very clear idea of how you are contributing to please Srila Prabhupada in the spreading of Krishna consciousness in a very, very broad sense. But it's something that you know, I can do this, I can engage in this, I can help these people, I can work with these devotees and assist them. And that's my thing. You've got to find your thing in Krishna consciousness. Now, and then later on it may change. Krishna may guide you and you may develop it in an incredible way, and that may take you to your dying day. But probably more likely you'll stick with that for a while, and then Krishna will present something else and something else will develop. But as long as once you get into the thing that I have to have my mission in Krishna consciousness, I have to have that, you'll always have it. But if you're waiting for someone else to give it to you, you might never have it. So that's a big subject on it, and it's very personal. When we talk about this aspect of Dharma, we're actually talking right back to the individual. And you're actually, in this case, we would define Dharma in terms of your specific identity. And that takes into, identity is always defined in terms of relationships. That's how we understand identity. What's our spiritual identity? Servant of Krishna. What's my family identity? Husband of, wife of, father of, daughter of, and so on. Identity is always defined in terms of relationship. Right? And then, with that relationship, there is the natural responsibility. If I'm related to Krishna as his servant, then what is the responsibility of me as an Atman to serve Krishna? If I'm related to husband or wife, what is my responsibility within that relationship? Parent-child, what is my obligation? Into our professions, if I'm a doctor, I have a relationship with patients. I can't be a doctor and have no patients. I'm not a doctor. Or maybe a different type of doctor. But if I'm a teacher, I have to have some kind of students. Otherwise, because a teacher is someone defined with a connection, a relationship between yourself and your students. And therefore there's a relationship, or a service obligation. And the responsibility is always defined in terms of a service obligation. Always defined in terms of service. So if I'm a father to my children, what is the service that I am being called on in order to engage that? What do I have to do to serve their needs? And that service is always positive and nurturing. So that's how kind of Dharma comes about. And then it brings in one other thing. Because in order to understand how I am to serve the needs of this other person within this relationship, what am I calling on? I'm calling on my own unique talents. Everyone has special, unique talents. I once saw this mug, I thought it was really good. It says, "You are unique, just like everybody else." But this is the point. We each have our unique talents. And in Dharma, when you're defining your personal dharmic mission, that's what you have to call on. You can't I can't do things the way you do it or someone else does it, right? I can only do things the way I am. So one of the things that you need to do and appreciate about yourself are the unique talents, abilities and concerns that you have as an individual, which Krishna has awoken within you. And you've got to think, well, Krishna's given me these talents. Are there ways in which I can engage them to serve him? I have special opportunities. Are there ways in which I can utilize that to serve Krishna. I have a particular talent, or I have a particular even mental approach. You know? I know particular devotees who have who are blessed with such patience that I don't have. I don't understand the word at all. But I see other devotees who are blessed with the characteristic of patience. And they're able to serve Krishna by caring for other devotees through that particular quality. So it's skills, quality, opportunities, training, realizing, whatever it is. These are the things that you draw on in order to serve Krishna. But you must keep open. Because you're using these to serve Krishna, you've got to be in dialogue with Krishna. You know, it's very easy to think, well, and believe me, you know, this has happened. You know, I used to be a good burglar. You know, I was really good at my job, never got caught. Perhaps I should use this in order to serve Krishna, you know, and, you know, get money to build a new Haveli, you know. So that, did you have a dialogue with Krishna before you kind of entered that one, you know? So it isn't just our own idea. We actually have to dialogue with Krishna. And we know what that means, don't we? Dialoguing with Krishna. Guru Sadhu Shastra. And chanting. Yes, we will pray to Krishna, we will talk to Krishna when we do our puja or in our meditation, but we'll also then check what we think we heard or what we discussed with Krishna, with the other devotees and senior devotees and the spiritual master, and we will seek their blessings. So that's a nice thing. And I tell you, there's nothing more exciting for senior devotees, gurus, or whatever, to hear, you know, a devotee comes and, Maharaj, I've been kind of meditating on this particular idea of preaching, you know, or I want to engage in this service to the devotees. What do you think? You know, a lot of people would come to Prabhupada like that. Prabhupada would just go, that's very nice. Yes, please do it. And he would try to encourage devotees to kind of get engaged in that way. One of the kind of things, though, that you need to be a little careful of, it's very easy to have big ideas. And maybe some of you have got ideas which are absolutely brilliant, and if ISKCON did them, the world would change tomorrow. You've probably got, some of you, there's probably a few good ideas in this room, but you think, I can't do it because I can't get the Lakshmi from the devotees, or the temple won't pay for this, or, you know, they won't give me a room, you know, to do this, or I won't get this, you know. Prabhupada said, the definition of misery is relying on someone else's mercy. So if your Dharma is dependent on others facilitating it, you might strike lucky, but you might not. And I don't think you should start it in that way. You've got to start with the way that you can, within your with whatever's within your power at the moment. Do it. Don't wait. You're not dependent on anyone else. If it is dependent on someone else, it's not your Dharma yet. It might be, but it's not yet. Because if you can't do it, how can it be your Dharma? If it's requiring someone else to do something, it's not yet your Dharma. But if you can start what you're interested in and make some contribution with it today, then who knows how it might open up. You may inspire others, other things may come. But even if it doesn't, you're still engaged in your mission. The Manor is, you know, has got old fogies like me involved in kind of as trustees and other devotees who are kind of getting old, and often there's discussion of, what will the next, where will the next kind of leadership come from? And actually, I have no problem, I would see that a key group to the development of and take on the big responsibilities of our temples, and particularly Bhaktivedanta Manor, are here in this room. That there's many opportunities, and we've got a new community hall coming up, the Haveli, and Prabhupada wasn't interested in buildings for themselves. Actually, sometimes he would indicate like that, because he would often talk about, we have printed many books and we have built many temples, and he would boast like that to outsiders, as if that, printing books and building buildings is a big thing, and it is. Prabhupada actually realized it is a big thing. Those are two of the heaviest endeavors that humans can get involved in. If you can print books and build buildings, you've pushed the material energy considerably. And I don't mean necessarily materialists do it, and it's a big thing. So Prabhupada would use it as a way of demonstrating the efficacy and the prestige of ISKCON by saying we have many books, we've been able to print many books, we've been able to build many buildings. But with us, it was very clear that he had no interest in the buildings for the buildings themselves. It was because they were places to facilitate the preaching of Krishna consciousness. So we've now been granted the planning consent for an incredible facility at the Manor. It's going to cause turmoil and chaos and disruption during that building period beyond our wildest dreams, or imagination I should say. But when complete, and it'll probably take longer and cost more than we've ever imagined also. That's the nature of building and development projects. But when it's complete, it offers great scope for our development of our preaching. And I'm very concerned that, that is always the mood that we have for the Manor. It's 20 years since I left, to go to Wales. And every time I come back, I just see new things there, and, the place looking better. And actually, I'm so proud of the place. And the preaching and the programs that are going on, it's incredible. And we have to develop that more. And I'm going to get onto my final hobby horse, then we can, and I've talked too long, sorry. But I want to kind of get on my final hobby horse. And that is what I believe to be Srila Prabhupada's 3-step program. Prabhupada tried to preach and develop Krishna consciousness in India. And to get support and to get other devotees around him, either from the Gaudiya Math or his god brothers and or others, to kind of gather around him and facilitate his preaching to go to the West. That didn't really happen. And it was perhaps Krishna's way of glorifying Srila Prabhupada singularly, that he travelled on his own with practically nothing from India to America to start his preaching. And we can really understand the vision and the personality. And we have, that's why we are so dedicated to Prabhupada, because we know he did it, all that on his own, on behalf of Krishna. Prabhupada's preaching in America was successful, and then of course he fired up the UK by sending the devotees here in 1969. And I remember hearing in the 1970s that actually, and of course what happened after that was he probably made a couple of visits to India, but he then brought a whole group of devotees to India, and they did tours from what was then Bombay, go through Gujarat and other places to Vrindavan, with the travelling white elephants, and dancing with the devotees, and it really had an effect. And I remember hearing that the reason Prabhupada came to the West was to get devotees to come back and get India to accept Krishna consciousness. When I first heard that, I think I felt a little disappointed. Wasn't it to come to the West for the West's sake, because we needed it, We definitely needed it, perhaps more, where we just, being, part of, Prabhupada's tools in which to fire up India. But actually, I think there's a truth in it. That Prabhupada's idea was, if India became more Krishna conscious and developed, it could do more to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So, go and get some Western devotees. Get back to India and preach up a storm there, and that's what's happened. It's kind of beyond anything that we could have imagined. The effect of Krishna consciousness in India. The development of the temples, the communities, the projects there, it's just unbelievable. Give great pleasure to Prabhupada. And we've done it in Britain in a kind of similar way, in a kind of microcosm. Prabhupada sent the first 6 devotees here. They developed a number of Western devotees. Then, because of those devotees, we were able to go to the Hindu community and to start our preaching there. We used to have real trouble making kind of Hindu devotees in the 70s. In fact, it was considered to be practically impossible. We had 1 or 2 Punjabis, but no Gujarati. And I remember, some very senior devotees say, we've got some support from the older kind of generation as life members, but the young generation will never ever help us. They're going to be lost. They're just not interested. I personally didn't have that kind of feeling, because actually that wasn't my experience. When I would go to the families' homes, I'd be talking with the parents, and we'd do the business for the life members, and we'd say, where's the kids? Oh, they're next door watching the television. Bring them in. So the kids would come, what am I doing here? And we just talked to them. And, it was very clear that they were intelligent, that they were thinking about spiritual topics, and actually really looking for something to touch them. That wasn't just, you've got to do this because it's, it's our religion. It's what we do, And, well, why do we worship in this way? Well, it's just the way it is, isn't it? There was no answers, there was no kind of guidance, there was no juice to it. But when they kind of realized that there was actually a purpose, there was some kind of meaning to it all, they got very excited. So that gave us the encouragement to start the youth clubs and the summer camps and the Mahabharata Times and all those kind of things we did, youth. And it took off. So, in many ways, what we have done is we kind of used Prabhupada's method of taking a few Western devotees to kind of fire up the Hindu community in a way that is so powerful now. And the temple is so well looked after, so well organized, so well financed. Massive festivals that could never have been pulled off in the past, and preaching in a way that could never have been achieved in the past. We have connections. We've now become establishment, where we were the we were feared or kind of derided as some kind of cult. We're now establishment in with the government, supporting our schools, supporting us in whatever we do. It's incredible. This is the result of the power of getting our Hindu community behind us. But this is actually only step 2. This was Prabhupada's plan. I'm sure Prabhupada saw it like this, because Prabhupada was very concerned to make sure we were preaching well to the Hindu community during his visits to the Manor. You know? He was concerned. And he would love what we've achieved now. But now the challenge is to actually do what Prabhupada intended, that we use all of this resource and now go out and make everybody Krishna conscious. You know, because we're not a temple or a religion or a spiritual process for just a handful of people, one community. We are actually the process for every single soul loitering within this big universe. We're their savior. We're the process that they need to adopt. We've got to be so broad. So that's the challenge now. And I look to see the new Haveli Hall, and I kind of think this is just another huge opportunity, that with the resources that we have attained now, we have such incredible preaching facility. But we have to take full advantage, and we actually have to make sure that we're going out and bringing many, many souls to Krishna. But the challenge is that we appear relevant to everybody. I.e., do we appear relevant to everybody? Have we... In the 70s, frankly, many Hindu families would come and see the temple and think that's very nice, but Krishna consciousness is not for us. It's for Doryos. You know? The Vrindavan temple used to be called Angrezi Mandir. Probably still is. Yeah, these names never change. And people would not, the community would not think it was relevant to them. Yeah, we'll go there because they've got the nicest deities. If you want to go and pray to, I'd rather go and see the sad deities in, say, Southall. I'd rather go and see beautiful smiling face of Radha Gokulananda. That's why they would come. And they knew we would do that very well. But they thought, actually, the culture there is not relevant to us. And perhaps, in many cases, it wasn't. There was a certain hippified culture in the 70s that took a while to grow out of, and wasn't grown out of everyone yet. But it kind of imbalanced. There was an imbalance there that we suffered under. And other people would not necessarily see it relevant to them. So we actually had to work very hard in order for the broader Hindu community to feel that actually Krishna consciousness wasn't just a place to kind of come and see the deities or maybe come on a festival, but actually Krishna consciousness as a spiritual process was relevant to them. And that took a little while. And now we have the challenge that we've made it so relevant to our community that we might now be sending out the opposite message. When people come, they think, well, this is a nice place to visit. I like to see the cows, and it's very peaceful, and the temple thing looks very nice. But this is a Hindu temple. This is for Hindus. And therefore, I'm not sure do I fit in here? This goes back to, can I belong here? So this is the challenge that we'll always have, How we make Krishna conscious, a sense of welcoming, and a sense that people can feel I belong here. Not just I can visit, because we're very good at welcoming and people can come and they know they can visit. But we have to take it to the next stage. Can they feel they belong here? And then that's the belonging. Can they get the pleasure that we are getting from it? Can they feel that also? Not just that it's a nice place and I'm getting a little shanty, little piece. But am I getting the taste? Am I getting the mystic experience? Is that open to me? And can they find their meaning in life, in connection with the temple and ISKCON? That's what we have to give them. So besides having belonging, pleasure and meaning for ourselves, we have to see how we can organize things and create the right kind of culture and mood and sensitivity so that everyone can feel, I can get those three things and actually experience those three things in our midst. That kind of becomes our next challenge in Krishna consciousness. So, sorry, I've spoken a lot, and thank you very much for being very patient with my hobby horses. You know, if there's any kind of points or things that you would like to discuss, you know. Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Thank you for the class. You know, you're mentioning about finding your unique kind of path. I was wondering, can that be? Does each person have to have their own vision, or can that be part of a shared vision?
Of course, yes. It can be part, absolutely, and it will work best, and probably work only if it's a shared vision. But don't make it dependent on others kind of doing something if they're not part of the shared thing. If you've got one other person who has a similar interest, incredible. 2, 3, 5, 100, fantastic. But don't have it you and a shared vision with someone who is meant to do something and never gets it together. You know? Or who has to give you something in order to make your thing work. That's not shared. You're quite right. It has to be shared.
Just to follow on from what Prabhu was saying, I think a couple of considerations. One, we may find a group of individuals, or one person, or nobody, and whichever in that scale it may be, where we find something that we're passionate about, or where we have that desire, and we may go along that way. I guess what I'm saying is, how important is it to keep awareness, to lend a hand, or to collaborate with those who are doing things that are perhaps not what our passion is, but they're equally still relevant in serving the movement. So if we're still trying to serve Prabhupada, but they're in differing ways, and it's my humble opinion, and I'm sorry, I'm just being very frank, I find a lot of groups within our movement here in the UK who act in a kind of disparate way. They don't just necessarily cooperate. I saw that with the Vaishnava Professional Network. Various things were going on. There wasn't cross-collaboration. And I guess what I'm getting at is it not equally important not only to follow one's passion, but to be there, to connect and to collaborate and lend a hand to other people so that we can mutually move forward.
Yep, actually, and I touched a little bit on this thing just before you walked in. We've always got to see ourselves as servants of the broader ISKCON society. So even if we've got something which we're very interested in and even very much engaged in, first of all, we have to do it in such a way that we know isn't to the detriment of other ISKCON activities. And it's part of the plus, not that it's either a replacement for, or putting down. We're not just trying to rebalance, but it's always in addition. It's always something new, extra, that will be of help. We've always got to be mindful, if we only do our own thing, we will become very kind of stilted, independently minded, insular, and we'll start to look at other devotees and not appreciate what they're doing, what they're asking of us, and we'll probably become offensive. So always we've got to be open to engage with others. So if they come and say, Prashanti, I know you've got could you help us with this or do this or that? Our first reaction really should be, well, yes, I'd like to, So somehow or other, even within, finding our own little special thing, it's getting the balance. Our responsibilities of service to the other devotees, to the temple, making sure we have time for engaging, perhaps in some kind of puja or festival thing, those shouldn't be jeopardized. This is on top. This is the thing that kind of gives us a special It's a thing we kind of think about first thing when we wake up in the morning. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? That the first thing that should trouble you in the morning is, what if I did this? How I could develop my little thing like this. Try and wake up in the morning. I mentioned in my Vyas Puja offering how in recent years I've become obsessed and plagued with the science preaching thing. And it really is. It plagues you. I go to bed thinking, and I wake up in the morning thinking, how it all works, and that's good. That's what you need. We're looking to kind of engage this genie of the mind. You find something good for it to worry about, to kind of engage in. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? And you'll find that you really start to enjoy being with your mind when it's kind of thinking up new ideas and trying to kind of understand certain aspects of Krishna consciousness. But at the same time, the phone rings. Prabhu, can you come and help with such and such? Yep. And we do have to be, we have to kind of keep very much involved with whatever else is doing to make sure that what we're trying to do actually maybe can assist. And then there's more chance of shared activities. I'm not just encouraging you all to kind of get on your own thing and never see another devotee and refuse to help out for anything because you're just kind of trying to concentrate on your own. That's not my mood. It's trying to find something which can be your passion, which can engage your mind, but at the same time within your wider service in Krishna consciousness. So thank you for that. So,
thank you, Prabhuji, for coming to Reading University class for the Chinese.
That was good fun. That was really good fun.
It was in June because most of the students went back, so left the 3 months exchange program with China, coming to Reading to English. They're all Chinese English teachers, they really love it. So now they're back in China like that. So I feel that all of you must have the same opinion, I guess, about where we meet all the international students, international people at the university. So really hope we can take this opportunity to attract them to Krishna consciousness. But I have this little slight problem.
Okay.
It's just the last time most of the people came are all Chinese, and somehow I put pictures in the website, and Facebook, to encourage more Chinese students, like those are in first year, second year, so that they can do us at least for 3-4 years, rather than just come and go for 3 months like the Chinese students last time. So, but the local Gujarati, young boys, they don't like it, They will say they will actually like to feel in the comfort zone. They like to actually like to attract more comers from the Hindu stock, rather than like that. So I kind of say, okay, that's cool. Whatever you like to invite, that's cool. But I also like to invite the Chinese too. So there's a little bit of conflict because they want to see majority are Chinese.
It was a very interesting session.
They're young boys, only 20 years old. So
yeah.
But,
the program we did at Reading was actually it was really enjoyable. That I think that was entirely those students, those exchange students, wasn't it?
Yeah, all 3 months old, because most of the students went back for the summer, so that
it was great fun to actually present Krishna consciousness in that sort of circumstances to them, Well, this is the difficulty that you're experiencing is the kind of Kanishta Adhikari kind of mood of those particular Gujarati students, thinking that Krishna consciousness is limited in its scope. It's for certain people and not others. It's nice that they're interested in Krishna consciousness, but it's not a very developed image of Krishna consciousness. And you simply have to encourage them, yes, great, we'll do a program. If you've got people that you think and you want to kind of do it for them, we'll do it for them. And there's nothing wrong with having different types of programs for different groups. I presented that particular material to your Chinese friends.
They like the red lantern, especially example.
We presented that in a particular way for them. And I would do it differently if it had been a more Gujarati kind of a local Hindu community kind of youth, we'd have been able to do it differently to them. And we've got to be able to preach in every circumstances. And we may have to arrange different programs for different people, you know, and we're always going to have a certain groupism within any kind of wider society like Krishna consciousness. We are the international society. There are real differences in as you go around the world seeing devotees from different countries. And you know, Pandava said you've visited quite a few of them, haven't you? There really is differences, you know? And that's fine, that's part of the kind of, our human conditioning kind of still is there in these stages of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, we all love to come together, we can all do a big kirtan, but actually often in the kind of nurturing of our spiritual life, we may need to hear things in a particular way, to associate with people in a particular way, to even have a particular type of prasadam. You know, there's certain things that may be helpful in our comfort period in order to get us to the point. But then later on we just start to see souls. And that's ultimately where we're trying to get to in Krishna consciousness. We see souls.
You know, the mission, it comes from the need. Like the need at the time was to keep the temple open. It seems like the current rhetoric, like this post 50th anniversary kind of period, is that we're doing great, everything's just fine at the moment. So it kind of like that, and it feels to me in some respects that at the risk of being slightly controversial, that bureaucrats come from the inside and revolution comes from the outsiders.
Yeah.
So you're saying sense of belonging, and a point made just there as well. So how do you facilitate the outsiders?
Well, I think that's my point, you know, that we've had too much of a kind of culture of feeling we need to control and not giving enough encouragement or facilitation, or even just kind of saying, yeah, do it. I don't think we're doing that. We're doing great. If I look at where we were and where we are now, it's very easy. We're doing great. We have got, particularly Bhaktivedanta Manor, it is the most incredible temple outside of maybe the dams. You know, but it is the most incredible temple in the world. It has, no other temple has the range of facilities, the range of programs, the range of culture, social help that it has. It's just incredible. But if you look at our impact on British society and getting all the souls, the 60 million souls in human bodies engaged in Krishna consciousness, then we'd have to say we're not doing that well. We've got a long, long way to go. You know, if you look at the public perception of Krishna consciousness, one of the things that's very nice is that, you know, they consider us we're peace and love. You know? Where that, you know, that's our kind of thing. You know, like where they had the Daleks chanting peace and love, following the devotees, yeah? You know, the one advert a few years ago. So this is great. They portray us as a peace-loving kind of group. You know, in terms of various religions in the world causing trouble, you know, to think of us in that way is very good. However, I feel that the general attitude of the public is something which I find very hard. And that is that they think we're nice, we're peaceful, but we're irrelevant. We have no relevance to their lives. We have no relevance to the issues of the country. I would rather they hate us. I would rather they disagree with us. I would rather, you know, the worst possible thing, I think, it really hurts my heart when I see that attitude. They just think we're irrelevant. That's a huge failing. Prabhu would not be happy with how well we've done on that. I think we just have to look at this 50th anniversary stage as we have developed a foundation for preaching. We have got a temple which is secure, which has got its permissions, and which will have even better facility. It is so financially stable, it's incredible. It has a huge congregation and community of very, very well trained. It's got the most incredible resource. How come we now can't go out and make sure that everyone in Britain thinks we're relevant? Let's have them disagreeing with us, perhaps. Let's have them saying, no, you're wrong. But at least they will have heard what we're saying, and it'll have forced them to think about it and to engage in it. But at the moment, they think they don't have to worry about us. We're not causing any trouble, any disruption. We're not affecting enough people to make anyone worried about us. And we're not talking in a bad way, we're talking in a good way. We have to make Krishna consciousness relevant for people. And have people recognize who Srila Prabhupada is and the brilliance of the philosophy that he has given, which actually can unite everyone and everyone can belong to, whatever their background was or wherever they think they are. It's of no relevance. That's of no relevance. Krishna consciousness is the only thing that's relevant. And we've got to get that message out.
Thank you, Prabhu. I was just thinking that most of us here are probably working, and often we are interacting with material energy, and what happens is that you perform an action and you get results, so there's an immediate sort of dynamic relationship. And because of that, you have that experience and it motivates you. You know that if I do this, I will get this result. And so you think, if I do this now, I'm going to get something bigger or better. How do you apply that in your spiritual life? How do you maintain that enthusiasm when we're sort of taught in theory that you should be detached from the result, or the result may not come? So then you may, like myself, I may not feel enthusiastic to endeavour for it.
Yes, but frankly, even in modern corporate kind of training, you see the success as a consequence of doing things right. That success isn't the goal, it's a consequence. So that's Bhagavad Gita. That actually it's doing the right things, doing all the actions, the outcome will be the consequence of that. But the goal is to do all the right things. So the same attitude that you apply to work should be the same attitude you apply in devotional service, and that's what Dharma is all about. Dharma is actually understanding how to act in a certain way, that you're doing the right thing because it is the right thing, and then the outcomes will be as best as they can be from that. And that's how to run your business.
Thank you.
Okay, Prabhu, I want to comment on what you've just been saying about you feeling bad in your heart about where we are in terms of our ability or lack of ability to be able to make more influence. And if I may speak frankly, I think a lot of it's to do with, unfortunately, our being locked in to a certain mindset. Many of us who've been associated and hanging out in temples and growing up with ISKCON, some of us in the room, have perhaps become somewhat conditioned, and I would therefore say by extension constrained by a certain type of thinking. There's a certain type of thinking that says we've got to preach in this way, or a certain type of fear or paralysis due to fear is built in. We think, okay, if I preach in this way, that's going to be offensive. If I do this is going to be offensive. There are so many concerns that we don't sometimes end up thinking outside the box, and I think that to get extraordinary results, to reach out to people who we wouldn't normally do so, requires extraordinary thinking and extraordinary compassion. That means we have to be thinking beyond the standard means, and that may mean that we have to take the philosophy take an extract of that philosophy that is relevant to that world outside, to that audience. It may not be Srila Prabhupada, and it may not be even Krishna directly, but it is an aspect that creates a hook that allows people to start opening their minds.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting point. And I would agree, but maybe qualify. Or try to clarify what you're saying, because I think it's an important aspect. I certainly believe that we have to be a pluralist movement, pluralist preaching movement. We have to allow many, many, many different methods, and Prabhupada certainly encouraged that. You know, he would, if he thought a devotee had any way of bringing something that was applicable to a very niche community, and it may not be the full Krishna consciousness. You know, we know Bhaktivedanta was willing to have student houses where they served meat, or restaurants that served. There was things that there was kind of levels of, being willing to engage in. Now, ISKCON itself may have to be very careful, and it may have its boundaries that it does not want to cross. Therefore, certain things cannot be done in the name of ISKCON, because that could bring disrepute or problems, because ISKCON is an organisation that is being looked at, by the public and by official bodies. So there has to be careful, but individuals may be able to engage in things beyond the actual umbrella of ISKCON, but part of the Krishna conscious umbrella. And I think there is room for pluralist activities like that. I think everyone has to do it in such a way that they're very careful that they don't bring disrepute to the movement, that things wouldn't reflect back, or that things would harm other devotees and their work. But I think we do have to be a little bit imaginative. And I think we have to kind of come up with ideas and ways in which to preach which are outside of the box. But we have to be very careful, then turning that into its own religion. That happens. Individual devotees might have a very powerful spiritual realization of their own, but they turn it into a religion. Say for instance, I sat up in a tree and chanted, as I used to do, chanting with a left hand, and had an incredible spiritual experience. So now, all of you Prabhus, the way that you will find enlightenment is to sit up in a tree, and instead of chanting in your bead bag, you'll chant holding the beads in your left hand. This is now the way that you will become Krishna. We've got to be very careful that we may have some valid spiritual realizations, but we daren't turn that into a religion. If I have a nice little way of preaching to a group of people, fantastic. But I can't say that's the way everyone else should start doing it. That would be turning it into the religion. We appreciate that this is a good effort, it works well, and other devotees may say, oh, that works well, yeah, it's okay, I think I'll borrow some of the ideas, and I think, we can kind of use that in a way there, and things can spread. But we don't try and turn our ideas into religion, say everyone has to do it the way I'm doing it. We've got to allow the pluralist efforts. And I think that's, we've got to be open, we've got to be humble. Krishna consciousness will never spread unless we're humble. There's all sorts of problems unless we're humble. But we've got to be enthusiastic. We've got to be patient. We've got to be determined. We've got to feel part of a bigger society, and that we're just one cog in the whole process, doing our little bit. We don't have to be thinking we're going to take over the world with what we're doing. I've met different devotees over the years with kind of messiah complexes, or thinking that unless I change the world, I haven't really achieved anything. They'll just be First of all, change yourself, Change, a little area that you can work on. And it might be big, it might be small, doesn't matter. It's pleasing to Prabhupada.
Which kind of leads me to my it's a follow-on question from exactly that, which is in our pursuit of trying to find our mission. How do we deal with? What would be a good way to deal with balancing our aspiration, that is our mission or our desire or our past spiritual passion, versus other people within the movement, their expectation on us? That is to say, some devotees in the room here may have certain sevas or services that, there's a certain expectation, official or unofficial, upon us to do a certain thing. Now that thing may not necessarily be our passion. At the same time, we appreciate it as service, and service is absolute. So do we apply the service is absolute mindset and say, okay, I'll just do it, even though our heart's not in it? Or do we actually be bold and say, okay, actually, you know what, with respect, I want to follow this. So what's the balancing point and how do we achieve that?
I think your heart has to be full with feeling good that you are able to respond to the wishes of other devotees and engage in the services that they ask of you. At the same time that your heart and mind have something that they dwell on every day. Now sometimes they're the same thing. Some devotees were so engaged in their kind of natural day-to-day thing that it was one and the same. And that's perfect, that's fine. But some other devotees, like myself, find myself that I've got a thing that I'm particularly passionate about, which really but I still get involved with a lot of other things, as requested, And if those requests became so big that I had to, then there might be some tussle in my mind. But that would be a good tussle, And that's not, I'm sensing that's not everyone's problem at the moment, Yeah, I think some of you would welcome that tussle. Having something that, you were so engaged, so full that, how do I balance it? And I sometimes have to think like that. I'm doing the stuff with the BBC, I've been doing it 20 years now. And sometimes I think, it cuts into other things that I could be writing and involved in. So I kind of, you'll always have that. You'll always be kind of worried, am I balancing my time, my energy, my focus correctly? But it's probably best to try and cover all the bases as best you can and take that seems to be what Krishna is asking you to do. All right. Well, look, I think I've chatted on long enough. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you very much, Akhandadi Prabhu. Wonderful as always. Akhandadi Prabhu is here for Prasadam, so maybe over Prasadam also you can take some more questions and interact with the group.
And we can tell the ghost stories.
So just two more things before we set Prasadam. One is an announcement on the book distribution, which we'll do, and then after that we'll have Dharma prayers, and then we'll set Prasadam. So, Prabhu, if you'd like to.
Hare Krishna. So, thank you, Akhandadi Prabhu, for a very nice opportunity to give Krishna to others. So, as many of you know, this December is Srila Prabhupada's book distribution marathon. So, the manner for the previous years, last year, the manner had a goal to distribute 40,000 books as a whole. Actually, we distributed 52,000 books. And that was the highest we've done in 18 years, actually, the manner. So, it's a big accomplishment for the manner. So this year being the 50th anniversary, we actually want to raise the bar. Prabhupada's motto was, whatever you do, double it. So that's exactly what we're doing. So this year for the manor, this is the first time actually it's been publicly announced. The goal is 100,000 books to be distributed during the month of December. That's why I've humbly come here to beg you for all of your endeavour and help. There are many ways actually you guys can get involved. Just get a raise of hands. Who's done any form of book distribution before? Okay, so quite a lot. And for those who haven't, we actually have a variety of ways. We actually have a whole team set up at the moment, and it's called the 100K Effort. For example, if many of you work in corporate companies, we actually have a lot of corporate companies sponsoring books to be distributed throughout the month. We have door-to-door programs, training programs, where various Sanghas actually involved in, all committing to distribute at least about 1,000 books each during that month. So if you are interested in coming or helping out, there's many ways you can do. Today we have some, look on the left, we have some book bundles. You can purchase these today, about £5. You can contact Chuan Mataji, she's there. And these you can distribute throughout the marathon. So the marathon starts on the 24th of November to the 28th of December. So you can get involved and distribute wherever you like. So please help us in this endeavour to make sure the Prabhupada smile, and it's something very dear to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said this is his life and soul. So we just have one small little video, I won't keep you too long, because I know you're hungry. And if you want to get in contact with us, please contact myself, Ram Lakshman Prabhu, or Shwan Mataji, and we'll happily facilitate you.
So, should we do Dharma first? And then you can share this after?
We are in this material world, simply suffering. Life after life, dukkha sasana. This place is miserable. But Maya illusion, we are taking this miserable condition of life as happy. This is condition. But there is no happiness in this material world. Everything miserable. The sooner we understand that everything is miserable in this universe, and the sooner we will be also to leave this material world and go back to God. That is our sense. Otherwise, whatever we are doing, we are simply being human. Because we are missing
anyone who walks into the world sees that the world is in dire need of a spiritual message. So, Srila Prabhupada came 50 years ago, he came with the books, he came with the message. In the final days, he was translating the books, and throughout his life, he instructed the devotees to distribute the books. This is at the very core of the revolution. So we are going to try to do something very special this Christmas, 100,000 books. I'm not quite sure how it will happen, but I'm sure Krishna will help and his devotees get enthused, inspired, and excited to get on board, and I'm sure we'll experience some magic and miracles along the way.
And this open distribution is giving you an opportunity to embrace spiritual life in stores.
Well, it's the message of being Krishna said, whoever takes the message repeats it, they will receive it.
When you give out the books, you're giving out the kingdom of God to the people. The time bombs, even if you read one sentence, you can turn your life.
There were times where not being anything at all, that someone bought a book,
And then I went in the alleyway to collect the rest of the book. And I said, yeah! Just to give them that change in their life. It's remarkable.
It makes me feel like we've given something more than money can buy.
But what we do have is immaculate philosophy, and that is the Prabhupada book, Pure Words of the Acharya. So that it was the book is the best.